and my guests are seated. From my extreme lefts, Kofi Abochi, his past dean, Gimpa Law School, and partner, Axis Legal. Then I skip the next person to the man to my immediate right, Dr. Justice Yankson, General Secretary of the Ghana Medical Association and a lawyer. I envy him. Two such prestigious, if you like, learned professions. Also here in the studio this morning, two politicians. And one is the Deputy Information Minister, Pius Enam Hajide. And also from the NDC is the National Communication Officer of the NDC, Sami Jemfi. Gentlemen, good morning and welcome to Newsfile.
Thank you.
Good morning. Great to have you. Okay, so 5 cops killed in 30 days. Are they in danger? Are we safe? That's the question we are seeking to answer for the very first topic. Then we'll deal with campaign financing. It's our democracy on sale. The graft war, or war on graft corruption, the scorecard under Akufo-Addo. The NDC accuses this regime of producing or doing a policy of one corruption scandal one day, or is it 1 week? We'll get them to explain. What did you say at your press conference? One corruption scandal?
There is one corruption scandal one day, and also 1 day, one fraud.
One day, one fraud.
Which is the 1D, 1F.
We'll get to find out how you're able to justify that. So now, let's get to the very harrowing, very disturbing thing that happened in the course of this week. And I stated earlier, and I'm sure the politicians are beginning to check their notes and to avoid the unnecessary politics they are beginning to do with this, that some 53 police officers have been killed in line of duty in the last 5 years. From 2013 to 2017, 48 of them, according to the Finder's analysis of data that was available to it, had been killed in the line of duty. I'll give you the statistics as to 2013, 2014, 2015, and so on. And then it's very disturbing that in a matter of a month, now 5 have died. How did they die? With the exception of one, it appears all of them have been killed by civilians. Okay, so it's been a very worrying situation. So the Interior Minister has had this to say. Let's listen to the Interior Minister, listen to the Acting IGP, James Opon-Bueno, and Dr. Baumia also has something to say. Let's listen to them and return to the studio.
Kaswa has been a place that has posed some challenges. And the Police Council has directed that the status of the police structure in Kaswa be enhanced so that you get increased resources to be able to keep the place peaceful. But all that depends on your cooperation. Security is a collective responsibility. Give the information and give it on time.
You also talked about the security situation here in Kaswa, and you're saying that your outfit, you're going to do more to augment the security men here because you think Kaswa has a peculiar, problem.
The decision has already been taken by the Police Council, and the status of the station has been enhanced, and so with the allocation of resources.
The Kaswa has a lot of security challenges. I can assure the people of Kaswa that we are going to deal with that challenge and we'll deal with it effectively. All the langars here, I'm sounding a note of warning to them. We're going to deal with them. They better find something better to do. Otherwise, they will not find favor in our eyes. So what I've said here is that what has happened will not deter us from doing or performing our normal duties. We'll continue to protect the people of Ghana as required of us.
The era when we send police for outside duties, whether for traffic or other duties, unarmed I think, is over. Henceforth, all police who go for outside duties will carry ammunition, will carry weapons, and will also have bulletproof vests and helmets. They have to. It is just by coincidence that just this week we delivered 4,500 bulletproof vests to the police service, and more will be coming. More logistics are coming. Since 2017, government has provided 567 vehicles to the police, 567 vehicles to help in their activities and to improve the efficiency of their response. We are getting more ammunition, more weapons. We've acquired 3 helicopters and so on, and a hangar. So we are trying to do a lot to improve the capacity of the police to respond. And I would also like to advise police officers that the bulletproof vests, I hear some of you say they are uncomfortable to wear. They may be, but they will protect your lives. Please wear the police vest when you are given police vest, the bulletproof vest to wear. Please wear the bulletproof vest because they will save your lives.
All right. So, and the emphasis that Vice President Dr. Bawumia gave on wearing the bulletproof vest, there's a reason to that, because apparently the police officers are uncomfortable wearing them. I don't know why. Okay, so let me start with Sami Jamfi, and I can see that you sort of have a whole script in front of you. Mm-hmm. How have you followed what has happened to the 2 police officers? Of course, now we know that 3 guys who were in that vehicle, the unregistered vehicle, have been arrested, but the driver, who is alleged to have been the one who shot and killed them, is the one on the run. And James Opombuenu has announced, the IGP acting has announced that there's a bounty of sort of 10,000 Ghana cedis on those who give information leading to his arrest. What do you assess is what is going on and what can be done about it?
Thank you very much, Samson, and let me say very good morning to my co-panelists and cherished viewers across the globe. First of all, the rising phenomenon of violent attacks on policemen in the line of their duty is very disheartening and disturbing for us as a political party. And I would like to join our flag bearer and leader, John Dramani Mahama, to express our deepest condolence and commiserations to the families of these police officers who have been killed, not just these 2, but the several others who have been killed in the last 30 days, and the entire, Ghana Police Service. Because, you see, our men in uniform are those we have entrusted with the responsibility of combating crime and protecting all of us, maintaining law and order, and so on. And in spite of the harrowing working conditions that they find themselves in, we know that many of them sacrifice a lot every day to keep us safe. So when you have a situation where criminals, unknown assailants are unleashing terror, violence, killing these officers who are doing so well for the country, it is worrying, and it is something we must address as a country. Because not only does it demoralize our men in uniform, not only does it deny them of that, sound mental state to do their work, it also erodes public confidence in the police service and our security agencies. It creates a state of fear and panic in the country, which is bad for business and the economy in general. So the implications for this warring trend of police killings is very dire. And we, as a political party, takes a very serious view of that. And we think that stringent measures must be put in place to address this phenomenon. What this phenomenon, exposes is our failure as a country to address the most fundamental challenge of the Ghana Police Service, which has to do with retooling and equipping our men in uniform to discharge their duties of maintaining law and order. I know that successive governments have contributed to the retooling of the police service. For example, the biggest retooling of the police service happened between the period of 2010 and 2016, when about 1,500 pickups and vehicles and other accoutrements were, procured for the Ghana Police Service, provided them with an ultra-modern laboratory center, established various units and so on, just to enhance policing and all that. But we are not seeing much today in the area of retooling, the Ghana Police Service. We are paying lip service and we are celebrating mediocrity. Look at the number of, for example, the vehicles that the Vice President, who is the chairman by default of the Ghana Police Council, just gave 567. And communicators of government and the New Patriotic Party are all over the place celebrating that, when we know that that is wholly inadequate if you look at the logistical constraints that our men in uniform are faced with. It is either we are committed to equipping, the police with the necessary accoutrements for them to do their work, or we are not. It is time for us to rise above the rhetorics, the political talk and the platitudes, and actually invest in the procurement of these logistics, and especially the protective gear that the policemen need, the bulletproof vests, the helmets, and so on. We've heard the Minister of Interior say that police officers attached with the Motor Traffic and Transport Department of the Ghana Police Service should henceforth be armed. We know that the tradition, has been one of not arming these MTTD officers and all that. He says they should be armed. Now the question is, do we have enough? Do we have sufficient ammunitions to arm them? Have these ammunitions been made available, and since when were they made available? Or is it an issue of vain, promises from those in authority? And if indeed these accoutrements, these logistics, these bulletproof vests are available, then why did we have to wait for these unfortunate happenings to occur before adopting this firefighting approach? It will therefore mean that people have questions to answer. I've heard the IGP indicate that the police has taken delivery of about 4,500 bulletproof vests, which will be distributed in the ensuing weeks to, our police officers. And the question I asked myself, Samson, was that when did the police take delivery of these vests? And why did we have to wait till this time before distributing them? In any case, we have a total of about 30,000 police officers in this country. And 4,500 bulletproof vests amounts only to just 15% of the number. So it's a drop in a mighty ocean, wholly inadequate.
Not all police officers will need them. Those who will go on operation.
Those who will go on operations.
And already, police officers who go on operation have bulletproof vests, they are armed. It is the MTTD department who are not armed. Even so those they are the ones now being included. Is that not an easy small group
It is not
to
wholly
cater for?
true that policemen who are deployed on patrol and guard duties are always armed. Sometimes you see a patrol team of, say, 10 police officers and only 2 of the team members are armed. There is a major challenge of, the adequacy of firearms and ammunitions for our men in uniform. We don't have enough. I've heard various security experts lament, the sordid state of availability of these logistics and tools and accoutrements for our men in uniform. So it's a major challenge. And I think that we can do more. Sometimes it is said that to whom much is given, much is expected. This government is by far the most resourced government in the history of Ghana. Whether you look at it from the point of tax revenue or non-tax revenue, loans, or receipts from our oil resources and all that. And I believe they can do more. What is being done currently is not enough. And I would want to see the Vice President, the Minister of Interior, and other appointees of President Akufo-Addo invest more in retooling, the police service and other security agencies. But you see, something even more worrying is the nature of these attacks on the police. And the brazenness, the impunity, the impudence, the boldness of these criminals, to engage policemen in uniform in armed combats, killing several of them in the process. Look at how these 2 police officers were killed at Kaswa. They stopped some unknown assailants who were driving an unregistered vehicle. They didn't stop, they chased after them. And these assailants rather stopped and started shooting at the police. According to the eyewitness account you supplied us, even when one of the injured police officers, ran into a grocery shop to take cover, this killer, the alleged killer, went after him and shot him in the grocery shop. Look at the boldness. The worst of it was what happened at the Kwabenya District Police Headquarters, where a gang of armed bandits besieged a police station in broad daylight to release, armed robbery suspects and actually killed an inspector who was on duty that day. So this brazenness, the boldness, we are beginning to see play out in our country, for me, is a product of the rising insecurity in this country, the worsening security situation in this country. And the fact that people think that they can engage in these acts of crime, attack the police, and get away with it. That, for me, is a problem. People who have been appointed into critical positions, some say, look, in the history of this country, the Akufo-Addo government is a government which has had many appointees in the area of security than any other government. For the first time in the history of this country, we have employed a Minister for National Security and at the same time employed a Minister of States in charge of national security, who we are paying. We've employed a Minister of Interior, a Minister of Defense. We have security coordinators in all the regions, and I was just informed recently that security coordinators have also been recruited across all the districts of this country. And yet, the security situation in the country keeps worsening. Okay. We are seeing an upsurge in violent crimes. We are not seeing any measures being put in place by these officials to address this phenomenon.
Okay, so you can hold on there.
If I could just conclude
with my last point. There, and
I just wanted
I'm not
to make
too sure whether there is an increase in violent crime, because you don't give us any statistics to show at each stage what the level has been. In fact, the statistics, as we know, do not confirm that we have had an upsurge at this time. But you wait.
If you look at something like armed robbery, the recently released police statistics for 2018 and 2019 shows an astronomical increment in armed robbery. And I will show you, the links to that for you.
You hold on. We'll take care of that. Now, so while Sami was, talking, I had you clear your throat a number of times, suggesting to me that you are itchy to, sort of respond. I would want you to look at it from where you sit in government and having almost all the information that we expect that you should have as a Deputy Minister of Information, rather than a response. So we've had a Vice President, we've had Ambrose Derry, so I'm sure that they would have given you further briefing as to what will happen. But we must, first of all, also not forget to say our condolences to the families of Sergeant Michael Jameshi and Lance Corporal Awal Mohammed, the two who were killed in that dastardly manner. But as you are aware also, the police have done well. They have arrested, on Wednesday, they arrested 3 suspects, occupants of the unregistered vehicle that was stopped, that didn't stop, that they chased, and then the shooting happened. They have arrested Ibrahim Zakaria Isaac, Isaac Emisa, and Dominic Kome for allegedly shooting and killing the 2 police men at Gomwa, Budumburam, near Kaswa in the central region. They are now on the manhunt for Dua, the one who was also said to be the one driving. And we understand that when they left the vehicle, they left traces in the vehicle. There are documents they saw, including the registration documents for the gun. So they are looking for this particular issue. Okay, so Pius, let's hear you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Samson. Good morning to you, my colleagues, and to our cherished listeners and viewers. And I want to associate with you by also again showing our sympathy and commiserating with the families of these 2 police officers, and in fact all other police officers who have fallen in their line of duty. And I also want to agree with you that we should attempt...
so the information coming in to me now is that the last person that was being sought after, it appears, thank God, he's also been busted. It does appear that the Akosombo Divisional Police are the ones that followed his trail and arrested Eric Kojo Dua. He was on board a Golf vehicle with a certain registration number, and they said he had a plaster on his left side of his face. As soon as the arrest was made, someone at the headquarters, okay, so he's been arrested, and I'm being given a photograph. I'm sure in due course we'll show it to you, a photograph of the man said to be arrested and involved, and the last person that they were looking for. That obviously is good news, right?
Yes, it is good news, and I will come to it in a bit. But I was agreeing with you that we should not discuss this matter with any political lenses, and we should look at it as a national problem, because a national problem it is. We have to refrain from doing that because, one, it seeks to justify actions of criminals when we seek to politicize and to create a certain excuse for them. Number two, it also shows a certain insensitivity to especially the families of these police officers who have fallen in line of duty. So I would urge that we all take your advice rather seriously and refrain from what I suspect to be some politicization along the line. I think that in the first place, we have to agree that the disparity as far as the police-civilian ratio is concerned is worrying. And we have, as a country, have to deal with that matter about our police numbers. And it's been something that has been there since our independence. And gradually, we have been seeing some improvements. From 2017 up till date, I'm aware that 4,000 financial clearances have been given for the recruitment of new police officers. Out of that 4,000, 2,000 have actually already proceeded to training, and they have been trained and they have been deployed. I'm aware that plans are far advanced for another 1,000 to also move in. Now, if you do the mathematics, the 30,000 that we have, and you check the history, if we were recruiting at this rate within the last couple of years, the ratio would have increased quite tremendously. And I think that's a good thing that we are taking the bull by the horn, and we are beginning to see some really huge recruitments into the police. The second thing that we should also look at is equipping the police. And I disagree with my brother Sami when he says that providing the police within the first few years of a government's stay in power of almost 600 vehicles, the Alpha project, which has come, several thousands of cameras are being deployed in strategic locations across this country, which is aiding the police, giving the police real-time information and benefits of which are unrolling. And sometimes in solving some of the kidnap cases, the police have used information that have been captured on the Alpha project cameras. Again, the Vice President in his comment that you played to us indicated that for the first time in the history of this country, we are looking at aerial surveillance and that helicopters have been procured. As I speak to you, a hangar is being constructed. 9 police officers have been dispatched to South Africa undergoing training in aerial surveillance. I do not think that within the first few years of the first term of any government, these things that I am talking to you about are mediocre. They cannot be. And to compare a provision of infrastructure over 8 years, and he's right, it's between a certain time to a certain time, 8 years thereabout, to compare that to what is happening within this short time, when even on the back of what was inherited, I do not think that, honestly and fairly speaking, anybody would describe these major achievements as mediocre. And it is indeed, it's true that the police have some new set of bulletproof body vests had been procured for the police. I think that it is legitimate to ask questions, when were they procured and so on, but we should not create the impression that there are some people who were sleeping on their jobs. The information to that is that these procurements were recently just done. It's not like they came and they were lying down and nobody wanted to give it. They were recently done by this government, because we have seen that as a reaction to increased police work, visibility-wise, now the police have not just cars. They also have motorbikes, which makes it easier for them to access places that hitherto were not accessible by a pickup car or a saloon car. And I'm sure that you have seen some of those modern, quite sophisticated, with communication gadgets and equipment attached to them, those motorbikes making the rounds around most of the major cities in this country. Now, from what we understand, the criminals are beginning to feel the pinch, the presence of police, and results are coming up. We believe that the criminals, on the other hand, want to also show some force with a view to maybe even intimidating the police. It happens. If you are a watcher and you have followed security all over the world, it comes to a point that sometimes the criminals want to maybe engage in reprisal attacks, revenge attacks, and so on and so forth, when the hit is actually coming to them. And I think that we should encourage the police to become a little more alert, especially once they themselves admit that their works are beginning to manifest and that the criminals are beginning to see and feel the heat. And so they must also become a little more alert. And that's why the admonishment by His Excellency the Vice President that this talk about the body vests, the bulletproof vests being uncomfortable. Yes, I mean, that's an addition to your, I mean, you're putting on something, it has a little weight. It may be an inconvenience because we may not have been used to it. It wasn't there. A lot of them didn't used to wear it. Now we have noticed that even the MTTD, which hitherto were not prime targets for criminals, have also become, because as far as the criminals are concerned, if you read what is happening closely, they just want to, I mean, it's reprisal, it's revenge. They will shoot at anybody who is wearing a police uniform to make even, and so on and so forth. And so the call for the police to become a little more alert must also reflect in the ability to make use of the vests that have been provided. I have had interactions with police people, some of them who feel, well, they have, for instance, the helmet, which is a protective gear, but mostly will not wear it. But I think that we cannot, as a police force or service, we cannot drop our guard, and we should be on the guard at all times. And so the call should go to the police that we should also be a little more alert. The provision of arms to the police, Samson, I can report to you, we were in a sorry state when we took over. And these are matters of national security that ordinarily, and that's why I again would go with your call, that let us be wary where we want to lay the blame. Because sometimes in discussing the reality of the situation that we inherited, we may be crossing a certain line. But in general terms, something I can assure you that what was inherited by way of ammunition to the police was a sorry state. I can also report to you that this government has procured some new arms for the police. We have done that.
Okay.
There are some of them that needed major repair works. Those repairs have also gone on. Importantly, we are also investing heavily in the retraining of the police. For the longest time in the history of this country, especially under the last administration, police did not go on any retraining. Over 2,000 police officers within this last short time, these 2 years of this, over 2,000 police officers have gone on retraining across board, various levels, to bring them to modern policing techniques and so on and so forth.
Speak to Kofi Abochi here, who has the benefit of teaching some of these police officers, and to tell us what we should be doing, what we are not doing that we should be doing to avoid the situation that we find ourselves in now. And I'm sure if Ms. Abochi and Dr. Yankson may be asking questions that it's only Pius, who is from government here, who may be the questions may be directed at to answer for us. So first, as you speak to the issue of what you feel about what is going on, there is the aspect that we think it may be important to look at. There's a 13-year-old girl who witnessed the shooting. She was in the shop, that grocery shop, and you have seen the video. And she says that even whilst the officer was shot, she saw blood coming out of his mouth. She saw him being shot in the head from the back. She saw the blood coming out of his mouth. He ran to take refuge. And even as he was falling, he was cautioning them to also, as it were, lie down to avoid being hit by the bullets. She wept throughout when she was speaking to Maxwell Agbagba of JoyNews. And again, her parents tell Maxwell Agbagba that since the incident, she's just been crying. There is a 3-year-old who was also there. This 3-year-old, we are told, is becoming almost speechless after the event. He doesn't seem to want to talk to anybody. What should happen?
Well, Samson, thank you, and good morning to my fellow colleagues here. And let me also take advantage of this particular moment to express my condolences to the bereaved family and the police service as well. I don't think these are easy times for the police service at all. Now, back to the issues that you've raised. I'm very happy you raised this because in all the narrative, 2 key health or medical considerations in there, I have not heard them being discussed. You have raised one, I'll add the other one. Clearly, these are very horrifying, situations that these two kids have found themselves in. And clearly, listening to the 13-year-old on radio, I could pick clearly this girl is traumatized. What has to happen is that the two of them need urgent medical attention, and the details of that will mean involving clinical psychologists. They will need to go through therapy to really get them out of their current state. What you described is perfect. They're all traumatized. And the moment we forget to deal with this aspect, the scar is going to be with them for a very long time, and the consequences could be worse than we are experiencing now. It is at this point that the social services, i.e. the social welfare department, working together with the police service and to an extent maybe the Ghana Health Service, should ensure that they trace these two kids and get them the needed attention. The police service likely also has all these, medical facilities and professionals in their midst, but assuming without admitting that they don't even have them, and now because maybe they may be somewhere, there are still quite a lot of them in terms of the clinical psychologists and other health professionals who can deal with these situations in the system.
What are the potential repercussions if they do not receive the sort of therapy that you are talking about?
It's almost always very difficult to predict what a particular person's ultimate response will be. But the general picture is that some become suicidal because you see them at any given point, these images, come back into their minds, they're hallucinated and what have you. So the ultimate could be suicide. Like you're saying, this 3-year-old...
As a result of the trauma,
yes,
that the flashbacks will give them.
Yes.
Okay.
This young chap who is not talking, if you don't take time, could remain in that state and could just go into depression. So there are varied consequences ultimately.
Kids can go into depression?
Yes.
Oh, really?
It's not only adults. It's all about the experience, the emotional aspect, the mental, the psychological effects. Kids operate just like adults. It's the same system.
Right.
So whatever happens to adults, you can get same happening in kids.
I don't know the other one that you say you wanted to raise, but if it is not this one, I was thinking, was it possible that this other officer who didn't fall to the ground immediately could have received help, but for the fact that he was put on a motorbike? You saw him, he had been shot in the rib somewhere, and you saw blood coming out of the rib. And he was running, just grabbing anybody in front of him. They placed him on a motorbike. Saw a couple of vehicles around the place, but he was put on a motorbike. And you could tell that he would even fall because he couldn't bring himself to hold. He would be thinking about the pain if he was thinking at that time at all.
In fact, that police...
We're told he died when he got there.
Yes. That is the second bit I was going to talk about. And this borders on emergency medical services. You see, if you look at those amateur videos we saw, that policeman is a very brave man because even in spite of the wound, he was trying to hold on. When he was put on the motorbike the first time, he tried to use his right hand. The injury was, I think, more to the left.
Right.
You could see he was trying to hold on. Now, the issue here is this. You could see that guy was also bleeding, clearly. I mean, his white top was stained and all that. So, naturally, he was losing blood. Now, when you continue to lose blood without any replacements, you go into what we call hypovolemic shock. Now, what was happening was that at that point, if we had our structures well organized and working properly, this guy should not have been put at the back of a motorbike. Rather, we should have actually called for an ambulance with first aid and technicians all available who could at least sustain him using our basic tools, you know, infusions, oxygen, what have you. Even if it means they needed to do some medication, the level of training for those technicians, they'll be able to administer something. They will also be able to do their best to at least stop the bleeding, because that was the major source of his problem. The more you lose, the more you go down. Of course, if that were in place, I'm not saying that at all costs that would have saved him, because I don't know the extent of the injury.
Helped, like
but
you say.
Clearly,
and
it could have sustained him.
Before the ambulance also would have arrived, you would see that in front of the police vehicle that was sitting there, the police, I think it's a pickup vehicle.
Yes.
You will see in front of it, you see a pool of blood.
Yes.
So, is there anything we can tell, you know, our viewers and listeners, I mean Ghanaians generally, about what to do in terms of first aid, so that something could have been done in the meantime whilst we're looking for an ambulance to avoid, you know, what?
You see, the problem we have is that, unfortunately, our society is one that we haven't paid attention to some basic things. Elsewhere, all school kids know how to do what we call CPR.
Right.
How to basic resuscitation.
CPR is what?
Oh, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, but we just say resuscitation, basically. What happens is that if you let it become a part of the society's day-to-day activity, anything that happens, be it at home, be it on the streets, wherever, there is somebody in the system, at the workplace, what have you, who at least can help with those basic resuscitation activities. Ideally, when you even go to workplaces, you should have people who have been trained and certified to do some of these things. You see, so what we need to do now is, we need to start looking at some of these basic things. Start teaching our students, individuals, groups. You don't really need to be even in school. It could be a church, it could be a fan club, it could be any society whatsoever that people have come together and created. We need to start teaching some of these basic things, basic life support activities, so that as and when these issues of this nature happen, you can do it. Look, to tell you one thing, the best way to even transport injured person in the absence of ambulances and what have you are the backs of pickups. But people wouldn't know. Okay. They would think that that is even, because the handling of the injured person sometimes will even contribute to early deaths.
Okay.
So these two key areas, we need to look at them. Whatever the police may be doing, we think that per the comments of the IGP, that of the Interior Minister and the Vice President, that quick response ought to happen.
And we must not lose sight of the fact that we have an ambulance system. It may have problems. We do not know at that point if anybody made a call to the ambulance, because it is possible that if they did, some ambulance too would have, you know, come. We don't know.
Well, we cannot vouch for that. I mean, as I say, you and I were,
I'm making that note because of your comment that if the system were working.
But let's be truthful to ourselves.
It may be working, but the people too may be ignorant,
let's
uninformed.
I agree. That is one. That is why I said, ideally, this should even be part of our educational structure, basic things, not necessarily only in the class. But all I'm saying is that let's be truthful to ourselves. As a state, when it comes to emergency medical services, we are not in the best of states for now. Okay. We are doing our best. I won't say we are doing our best. We are making attempts. But I think we could do better. We could do better than we are doing. Yes. Now, when it comes to what is happening, my take, you mentioned, I mean, my colleagues have said various aspects, so I didn't want to go into those bits, but you mentioned two things that I think we should start averting our minds to. One was the fact that this Eric Dia guy, per what the police have at the moment before he was captured, it was clear that he had a registered gun. So it means this person has been licensed by the state procedures to handle a gun. I think we should start looking at those procedures again, not because of this person, but this is a warning to all of us. We need to be able to even assess the emotional states of individuals before we hand over some of these things, because clearly what this guy did from a legal point is criminal.
The emotional state may not be permanent.
No,
So,
I agree. I agree.
By the time they acquire the gun,
yes, I agree, but it should be an, ongoing activity.
Okay.
Because you could have people who have licensed guns who could just go anywhere and start shooting. And this would take us into the bigger realm of gun control.
Okay.
I think that the police and all the other agencies who do these things should relook the procedures, and where there are shortfalls, I think same should be corrected. I'm saying this on the background that I have some information, even though I haven't been able to confirm it in its entirety. The source of it seems to be one that I can trust. That this same guy, some couple of weeks earlier, had involved himself in another situation, still with the basis being this gun or his license activity. I don't have all the details.
I think what they are claiming is that the gun has been used recently to also kill, sort of. That gun.
There is
but
something.
Not he, as in him using the gun.
So it brings two things here. You have registered a gun given to somebody, but that gun clearly is being used for some criminal activity.
Okay.
So beyond the emotional bit, we also need to look at the caliber of persons, their backgrounds, what they do before we give out some of these things. I'm not saying the system is not paying attention to them, but at least this is telling us that, look, we need to relook the structures, the systems, the procedures that we use in offering some of these guns to people. And then the general picture, where now we seem to have issues with killings, i.e. through guns. What it tells me is that there are still a lot of arms out there that probably the system has not accounted for. As to where they are getting them, I cannot tell. They could be locally made, they could be imported, what have you. We have a small arms commission and what have you, but I think we need to go back and wage a war on these guns in the system.
Okay.
There should be proper gun control, and if the police cannot do it all by themselves, I will request that respectfully we get the military to join the police so that we could have some joint activities. And then the swoops and the bits that the IGP was talking about, targeting Kaswa because it's a hub for criminals. I think we should not limit it to only Kaswa. The system itself knows all the high hotspots level, high level crime areas in this country. Look, if you talk to policemen, because of the work we do, I mean, as legal people, we know that sometimes the police themselves are very much aware of the key places where the criminals almost always can be found.
Right.
And I think we should sharpen them and make sure that we abet this seemingly, attacks which on the surface may look simple, but if you start looking at numbers, means that, look, we are beginning to see a certain rise in the rate at which police persons are being targeted. And if police people are being killed in this manner, God forbid, the next level when it comes to unarmed civilians, you can never, look at numbers. It will be huge because civilians are virtually almost everywhere. But like Pius said, if the criminals are beginning to target the police, then we need to meet them with that extra force to curb their activities.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think that the concern he raises about guns in the system is also very, very, very germane. Because as we know, not too long ago, I did a series of my takes on guns in this country and the Small Arms Commission's concern about the thousands of guns unaccounted for around. And the UN says about 3 trillion or so. It spent almost, within what period? I'll get that and share with you. For the purchase of gun, $3 trillion is spent each day buying guns.
That's the
you
world
can
over.
imagine. Yes. All right. So can we get on the phone now? Okay. We will be speaking to the police on the phone shortly. So now let me bring in Kofi Abochi. And it is deliberate that I want to hear him last. So people are saying it's a question of training. We have had police officers actually admit the issue of training, that it's been lacking. The Deputy Information Minister just said a while ago here that some training has been going on, but the police themselves have admitted publicly that there's not been training, so it's a big issue. Is it really about training that leads to what we have to talk about now?
Certainly not only about training, but the lack of training augments whatever the problem is. And if police officers are speaking about the lack of training, it's something that we need to pay attention to. The reality is that crime has been growing in complexity and sophistication, but training has remained simple, largely speaking. And so when you combine these two, what you have is a disparity. You have a situation in which people who are put on the front lines are simply not given the tools of their work. Now, training represents the tool of your work. If you don't have training, you lack the tools of your work. The politicians have done their thing, my two friends. And so one started politically and the other said, let's not do politics, and he also did it.
Yes.
So I know they'll do that.
Yeah.
That's what they're good at doing.
Yeah.
And
especially as we get into the silly season, you know.
Right, exactly. Well, we know where they are. But the reality is, let's depoliticize this. And I therefore joined him, and I think he agreed equally. Crime has no color. And when the armed robber shows up in your house, he doesn't ask you whether you're MPP or NDC. He simply does what he has to do. Therefore, there are some things that should be state. There are some things that should be non-political, and crime is one of those. The reality is that both governments over the years have been trying to do some resourcing. The question is, what is the caliber and character of the resourcing? I know there was some time ago when lots of cars were bought for the police, and you know, it was optically good. We've seen visibility efforts that was embarked upon by a previous IGP, which also has yielded some results. But at this point in time, the interventions that are needed needs to be nimble. And being nimble means they must be adaptable. We have to look at trends, the trends of things, in order for us to ensure that the interventions are targeted and specific to particular needs. You know, the cars that they're giving, etc., are good. But even the question of the cars, one may ask, how adaptable are these cars? Because these cars, apart from commuting them around, must also be good enough for chasing. Police cars usually do chasing businesses because the reason is police tend to stop people, just like this one. You stop them, they do not stop, you have to give chase. If you don't have the capacity to chase by reason of the fact that your car's engine is not as strong enough, then you failed in that area. So even these cars, as good as they are, as to whether they are nimble or they represented a specific intervention for a specific problem may be questionable. But I don't want to go into the question of efforts.
But the training, is it just about training the police? Because I'm thinking about it. If I were driving outside of this country, say somewhere in the US, and the police stops me, okay, first things that have to be done. Here, when they stop you, perhaps you put your hand in your pocket and you get a smile from the police officer. But elsewhere, if you try to put your hand anywhere than on top of your wheel, your steering wheel, you may get shot. So it's a lot of things, right? Even from us.
Well, on the lighter note, you mentioned putting your hand in the pocket because it depends on what's coming from the pocket.
Yeah.
You know, out there, what's coming from the pocket will get you killed. But here, what's coming from the pocket may be life. So it's a question of what's coming. But again, that's on the lighter note.
But now it's turning.
Well, that's on the lighter note. But the most important thing is what
the report actually is that, from the little girl, is that he said he was going into the car to bring money.
Ostensibly.
Money. That's what we are told. And he came out with a gun.
Right. So again, as indicated, things may be changing. But the key question is protocol. So protocol mixed with culture, you know, our cultural circumstances, the way we do things here, together with our relationship with the police, things may be changing now. The question is, what are the protocols for stop and search, for example? The barricades and the barriers which are on the street are designed to ensure that criminals are intercepted.
Right.
That's why they are mounted at certain times of the day, for example, even though occasionally you have surprise barriers that are mounted in different places designed to arrest and intercept certain incidents. So the most important thing is, what is the essence? What are the essence of these protocols, for example, that are put in place in a training regime, and whether we are actually effecting these?
because you have mentioned it. In Ghana, when you're stopped, the policeman, comes to you, and sometimes the interactions may not exactly be safe as far as policing is concerned. In many jurisdictions, when you're stopped, you're never supposed to get out of your car.
Right.
But in Ghana, you stopped, and you see people coming out of their cars, and coming out of your car could actually result in some form of attack. I'm talking about the person who is supposed to be the suspect. But this also then brings sharp focus, the fact that the roads represent the media for the commission of offenses. We can't ignore this, and it's an important part, which is now coming out through this unfortunate incident. And the reason I'm saying this is because we all know the spate of the use of Land Cruisers, tinted Land Cruisers. In Ghana, Land Cruisers have become a political car, so to speak, and police people are aware of this, and some civilians have taken advantage of this, that if you don't want to have any encounter with the police on the street, buy a Land Cruiser. And if it's black and it's tinted and your hazard is working, you're fine. You can drive anywhere, anytime, against traffic. You can do all kinds of things, and the police essentially will wave at you. But this represents the fact that the roads are being used as a media for the commission of offenses, as a medium for the commission of offenses, and therefore, it's imperative that the barricades and the barriers that are mounted on the street, it's imperative that these are actually used properly, and the principle that nobody is above the law should be implemented. I have gained added respect for the police, particularly because of this incident, and in light, particularly also for the barriers that are mounted. They are not perfunctory. When criminals are approaching these barriers, they are aware that there's a police out there, and a particular search may result in discovery. Right. And that's why these guys were taken off, and the police had to pursue them. So I think that the protocols are important. Now, I would want to touch on the question of the arming the police people.
Okay, so before you do that, let's speak to ACP David Eklu. He's Director of Police Public Affairs. Thank you for joining us this morning, sir.
Good morning, Samson. Thank you very much.
Great. So tell us, how did you now arrest Eric Dua?
In fact, information reaching me from the Eastern region, that's Senchi, is that our personnel from the National Operations Department, and then with support from other police officers from other units, have been working since this incident happened. And you are aware that we declared one Kwekudua wanted, who we believe is the prime suspect in this case.
Okay.
So a short while ago, we got information that he was arrested on the bridge, but further details will be provided.
All right. So so that gives you the beginning, a closure to those to be arrested and the beginning of the process to punish, right?
Yes, it's the beginning of the process, and then further investigation will certainly is ongoing. But this arrest, we believe, is key,
right,
to get into the bottom of this case.
Okay. Are you able to confirm also that he had used this gun previously this week or a couple of weeks ago?
That information is not available to us at this stage. It is also part of the investigation that we are conducting.
Okay. I respect the protocol that we had before the interview, so I'll not ask any questions beyond this particular arrest. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, too.
You're welcome. Okay. So
yes, I wanted to make a point about the arming.
Yes.
The arming police officers. It's not something that ordinarily we should even be talking about, because it's part of the work. As I mentioned earlier, the Labor Act requires that you give the employee the tools of his work. So technically, our governments over the years have been failing the police. We employ them, and they have not been given the tools of their work.
Okay.
Every police officer, regardless of the area of his work, and some are even in offices and they actually never come on the streets, all of them are entitled to be armed, because primarily police is about it's a force work. It used to be called the police force before 74, so it was converted to the police service. So fundamentally, there's a force angle to that, which is part of their training. So in principle, every police officer must have this.
So they should be armed?
They should be armed, but it is what it is, and we are where we are, and we are not a country with endless resources, so we understand that. Government has
How exactly would arming them have prevented what happened?
Arming then may not necessarily have prevented this, but it gives one fundamental, it makes one fundamental difference in this regard, i.e., there would have been a capacity to fight back. I'm not sure, and I do not have the totality of facts to know whether this particular officer had the gun on him, which he didn't use, but I think it would have been...
They don't have.
They didn't have the gun.
It is a new directive now that they should be armed.
If the entire
MTTD.
The entire MTTD or the group that chased, the one that gave the chase to the criminals.
Two of them, yeah.
If the two of them were not armed, then to a degree, and with all due respect, and I think it's a bit sad because we're in a difficult situation, but it would have been a bit of a misjudgment. It would have been a bit of a misjudgment to even have given chase in the first place because they were not armed. They did not have the capacity to apprehend, given the fact that these people were running away and there was no opportunity of knowing the character of the people they were chasing. It's one thing to say, I'm aware that something is here, he has no arm on him, and I'm putting you under arrest. But if I'm coming to you and have no assessment of what you have and your capacity for resistance, the police must have the ultimate arm. That's why there's a graduated process for putting you under control. They can put you under control.
So it sounds like a clear misjudgment.
Correct. It's a misjudgment. I think
informed
in some
by
way,
what you were talking about earlier, lack of training.
In some ways, a misjudgment, which may be informed, as you said, by the lack of training. There are graduated processes for the police in applying various degrees of force. And ultimately, the police must have the capacity to use ultimate force. A capacity doesn't mean it has to be used. They must have it, and they will use it as and when the assessment of the situation calls for it.
Okay.
So in the absence of knowing the character of the people they were chasing, the people being in the car, the potential that the people may actually start firing back, and they may not have the means to return it, I think ordinarily the police shouldn't have used that. I mean, and again, I'm not a police officer, but I think they probably could have documented details of the car and commenced investigation and start looking for them instead of chasing them without the means.
Okay.
One other option.
So you say they can use ultimate force, but at this point, they should have made the judgment that they do not have the capacity to exercise the force.
Right. Unless.
Because the people were non-compliant.
Correct.
They have not obeyed their instructions to stop.
Correct.
Once they are moving and running away, it means you will need to overpower them.
Right.
The only way to do that is first that you are armed.
There's an alternative.
And you are protected also.
There's a rider to that. What the police do sometimes is that when they do not have the means to apprehend, properly speaking, they may give chase with reasonable distance between them and the offending car or people, and then relay information for backup.
Okay.
So what they may be doing is to provide an aerial mapping of the car after which they're giving chase while they call for backup. Okay. So once backup arrives and overtakes them, they give the information to the backup on the movement of the other car.
Okay.
But in the absence of that, and given the facts that we have, it appears there was some proximity, and it appears, I don't know if there was a backup called, it does appear as if there must have been the simple assessment that this is a regular car with regular people, and let's see how best we can bring them under control and probably just apprehend them. And it turned out, I think that judgment was poor, and I think, without respect, it probably may have resulted in this unfortunate
Okay.
death.
Okay, thank you. So I'll take your very final comments on this, and let's progressively look at what should happen to avoid some of these things, what we as citizens can also do to assist the police in some of these circumstances to avoid escalation of the circumstances that people find themselves. So quickly, your hand was up. Yes.
Yes. First of all, just to go back to some points that I was making, that the statistics show an absence.
And you should go for the juggler because you're going to be very brief.
And you look at, this is a story dated Wednesday, 29th August 2018, titled 5 Robbery Cases Recorded Daily in 2017. And the story says that according to the report by the Ghana Police Service, a total of 1,772 robbery cases were recorded at the end of the year 2017 as compared to 1,377 cases in the year 2016, representing an increase of 26.8% in armed robbery. There is another report by the Bureau of Public Safety which shows that this figure has increased in 2018 and in fact is worse when you look at the figures for 2019. So when our brothers in the NPP talk about major achievements in retooling the police and all that, even without disputing those claims, Samson, the question to ask is what is the effect of all these so-called major achievements?
Because to the extent that accepted not to do the politics.
No, hold on. You see, I'll come there. When we say that we shouldn't do politics with security issues, Samson, what exactly do we mean? Are we saying that holding those who have been placed in charge of ensuring the maintenance of law and order in society accountable for their failure to do so amounts to politicization? I disagree. Because you see, as a country, we have entrusted the responsibility of you know, the security of this country into the hands of certain people who happen to be politicians. If you check page 147 of the MPP's 2016 manifesto, it is clear that one of the major promises of this, the MPP, on the basis of which they were elected into office, was that if elected, they were going to put measures in place and ensure that the citizenry felt safe and secured in, you know,
and you are not saying they are not doing that.
I'm talking about an upsurge in violent crime.
You see,
I'm
the
talking about
the period you referred to and said the police were most funded, so to speak, by giving them tools and gadgets. I have shown you.
There were challenges.
I've shown you how police officers were also killed in situations like this.
I'm not saying this is a new phenomenon. We are talking about a rising phenomenon, which Dr. Yang says is not.
If you allow,
if I can just, I beg you. I beg you. I want to add.
If you will allow,
1 minute. 1 minute. Only 1 minute.
Samson. Okay. Let's even look at how cases of assault against policemen have been handled by government. The attack on DSP Nanka Bruce and several other police officers. We're talking about the attack of a senior police officer at the seat of government, which was captured on tape. What did we do about it? You see, certain things can send wrong signals to criminals and embolden them to engage in crime with impunity. Okay. And when we are raising such issues, we shouldn't just say that, oh, you are, because you see, the maintenance of law and order is the primary duty of every government.
I have not
and when they fail to do so,
just a minute.
We have every legitimate right to hold them. And finally,
thank you. No,
thank you. I've done 50 seconds.
Yes.
Interjection.
Sorry. Please. No, thank you.
I want to also clarify this, and it's important because I've said this many times about the politicization of everything in this country, and that is why even criminals. Somebody made a point. That's why even criminals are emboldened, because in Ghana, crime is not a crime. Yeah. Crime is a crime on the basis of which party side you are on. And that's why there are people who do things and hide behind politicians. I would rather take exactly what you said, Sami, and say that's exactly the reason why we should avoid politicizing this. First of all, when the Constitution speaks of government, it speaks of the executive. Government doesn't mean the party. So when you say government has failed, I want us to agree that government has failed as a machinery. And government as a machinery means both the NDC and the NPP.
Okay.
These are the two parties. These are the two parties. These are the two parties.
You certainly have
these are the two. No, we do. But these are the two parties.
When we are exercising our
rights, these are the two parties that have had the opportunity of ruling Ghana. And if you speak to the police officers, the problems with their barracks has been there for decades.
Yeah.
The problems with their injury care and welfare system has been there for decades.
You don't have to speak to them. We see it. We go to
the police officers. So these are,
how horrible
that's why I would not want to talk about which government.
What Kofi said. And sometimes for us as citizens, we should be able to tell the politicians in the face what we think. Look, Sami, between MPP and NDC and MPP, since you are seated this way, as far as we, the people of Ghana, are concerned, we are talking about ensuring that now that we are talking about security matters, we the citizens or the state in totality being safe when it comes to crime. Now I can tell you, yes, that's why I said the state. That's why I said the state in totality.
Okay.
Depending on where they sit, sometimes they make it look as if they are different. That's why I mentioned them and added the fact that the state in totality. Look, for us, over the years, MPP, NDC government, we know that both of you have made some efforts at retooling, enhancing personnel, what have you. But the baseline is that for us as citizens, we are not satisfied with what you've done. We think you could have done more to solve the situation. Look, NPP can just come and say that, well, they are now riding on the back of what you left them. What it then means is that you left them with probably a mess. They will also say that they have done that. You will argue that you did so much. But for us as citizens, what?
I mean, I have said
we are not satisfied with both parties.
Thank you.
Which has been placed on the head of this.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's the principle. Sami, it's the principle and being able to arrest. All we are saying is that we don't believe the politics that you guys do when it comes to
something. We
don't believe in those politics.
Wait, you take your
What we
time.
want is we want to be safe, and we want either of you, anytime you are in government, to do the right thing for us.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sorry. Yes. So, Pipes.
Yes, Samson. I mean, you will get into problems if you want to do the politics. So I'll refrain from it. But you see, when you are attempting to question the need to equip the police by such statements as though you are doing the equipping, but what are the results? We are not seeing the results. Look, you go to the developed parts of this country, I mean the world, America, in France, in Germany, where admittedly the police are better equipped than us. There's still crime. So that philosophy that for as long as there continues to be some crime, then it questions the need to provide equipment to the police, tells you the thinking of the NDC. Because I mean, just made that point.
I hope we don't go back again on that.
I know. I have my 1 minute. Let me just deal with it. But again, I think that doctor raises a critical point about emergency care, and that's why I'm happy that these 275 ambulances are going to come under IPEP. We have placed the order, and my colleague at the Ministry of Information has had to travel to inspect with the minister, and we are expecting these ambulances to come. I mean, and again, this is within the time frame we are talking about. Now, you see, the priority of the NDC and the NPP is that, and I will end on that note, they choose to order for a presidential fleet before they left power. When we came, we converted those cars. We converted those cars that they wanted, those comfort cars for the presidency. We converted them to vehicles for the police. It tells you a clear difference between the priorities that the NDC has and the priorities that the NPP has.
Sorry. And that is to say that the presidency has no need for vehicles and that you are not purchasing, or since then, you are not buying vehicles for the presidency.
That is to say that the police have more need for those vehicles, and that's why we gave them to the police instead of to the presidency.
If the presidency needed 100 vehicles and you decided to buy 50 at the time, my question is, you won't buy the 50
I'm saying
that
to
is
you
left.
that it's
you
not.
still buy.
I'm saying to you that it is not as though the president could not use those cars.
All right.
We could use them, but we prioritize the police over the presidency.
Thank you very much. But Mr. Abuchi, there's a police officer who is saying the MTTD department, they are in charge of traffic management. He doesn't see why they should be armed.
No, he's wrong.
And we also hear that the bulletproof vest, they don't like it.
No, it's completely wrong.
But the police officers who were shot.
Okay, the question is to him. This is an officer who does the job, and he's saying, you don't have to do it this way. We shouldn't be.
Kofi, can I just add something before you come in?
No, ask him the question. Can you answer?
Just to add on to what you said. You see, Kofi, when they say they are not comfortable or they don't want to wear it, is it that the specification that has issues because you deal with them, or that is supposed to be the standard for every policeman the world over? Because elsewhere we see them in these things. That's why I just want to.
Beyond that issue, it's about he's saying they manage traffic. They're supposed to be friendly with all of us, smile to us. You know, even when you are feeling moody in the morning and they meet you, they're supposed to put a smile on your face. Right. Elsewhere they do it so well.
Here they do as well.
Yes, but they do as well. I'll deal with that. But on the question of whether it's a combination of things. First of all, we should even begin asking questions about their attire. Those on the streets often wear the white.
Yes.
But not all of them do. Some also wear the black. And the black attracts sunlight, as you know. It gets heated up. It's a very uncomfortable environment. The bulletproof, by the very nature of its construction, contains a lot of layers. And a lot of materials that do not allow penetration of things, because that's what it's supposed to be. So one of the things it inhibits, rather unwittingly, is ventilation. It unwittingly inhibits that, and by reason of the fact that it's designed to provide a barrier between you and other external elements coming into your body. And so that's the reason.
It's supposed to repel
and then it's heavy.
bullets.
Exactly. It's a repulsive, it's a repulsive material. But in that process, it creates discomforts, and it's a bit heavier too when they wear them. So it makes them clumsy. But on the question of the arming, the policeman walking around with a pistol by his side does not necessarily make him a dangerous person, or rather an unfriendly person. The pistol is meant for someone else. As I said, that is the ultimate thing to use. One thing we have to address, though, once we arm police officers, is the requisite training. Because one danger is that we can actually create a system of trigger-happy police officers who, at the least provocation, just shoot. these are the collateral sides.
I think we are
but
supposed to be arming the immigration guys as well who are at the borders.
The
because
collateral,
they
yes. The
too
collateral
have
force
issues.
bodies, all of them.
Thank you very much. And
so.
I was referring to the arms situation in the country. We have more than 2.3 million firearms in private hands in Ghana, and as much as 47% is unaccounted. That's how serious it can be. And like Justice Jansen was saying, we may look at how we give the arms out. Randy Abe was here the other time and emphasized the point. When you are going to acquire a driver's license, before you drive, you need a training. You need to pass a test. You don't go through any test to get a gun. And even how to regularize your license, many people don't seem to care. We'll take a break here. When we return, we find out whether politics is now to the highest bidder. Those who would go to parliament, does it depend on how deep your pocket is? And why has the law that punishes the politicians with up to over 1 million Ghana cedis for not respecting the laws on party financing has never been used? Does it mean all these parties are clean over the period? We'll be right back.